Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Jennifer Phillips Russo. I'm the Viticulture Extension Specialist for Cornell University in the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. Our program consists of two land-grant universities with specialists from both one Penn State University and Cornell. We service the Lake Erie region of Pennsylvania and New York, and also the Niagara Escarpment. Thanks for joining us today. Today we have a special and timely podcast for you that's going to be led by Dr. Terry Bates. Dr. Terry Bates was the director of the My Efficient Vineyard project, and he is also the director of the Cornell Lake Erie Research and Extension Laboratory. Many of you have listened to he and I talk about his nutrition studies, which there are more to come. Yeah, it's been a very busy summer, so apologize for a little bit of the delay. But he recorded a new video, and it is on the efficientvineyard.com blog site. So you can find that again at efficientvineyard.com, and you can listen to it right here. The growing season is flying by. We are 3 weeks out from Concord veraison and looking at the harvest doorstep 3 weeks more after that. So this is a good time to finish up crop estimations. And if you did not do them at 30 days post bloom, and take some assessments of vine balance to decide when and where you will start harvesting. In this video that Dr. Bates you're going to listen to it in just a moment. He demonstrates how to use canopy NDVI at pre-bloom and pre-veraison with some directed field observations to generate spatial yield, vine size, and crop load maps in Concord vineyards. If you want to access that video and listen to it in your own time, besides hearing it, because he has slides that he shows with you and walks you through some things, you can find that at efficientvineyard.com or at YouTube. Just go to the efficientvineyard.com. It's linked there. It'll take you right to it, and you can listen to him and watch him perform this next podcast. Okay, thank you all for joining. As always, we hope you have a great week. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below, and we hope to see you all soon.
Hi, this is Terry Bates again from the Cornell Lake Erie Research and Extension Lab, and today I want to show you how we use an NDVI sensor and some field measurements to come up with a better crop estimate and also a crop load prediction for the end of the season to help me drive my harvest decisions. So, okay. If you're like me, you got a call from your processor rep last week or this week asking you what your crop estimate was. And hopefully you did some kind of systematic way of sampling your vineyard to know what your crop size is going to be this season instead of the old wild guess procedure. And so in this tutorial, I want to show you how we just use an NDVI sensor and some field sampling to get a more accurate crop estimate. Obviously, we want to know what the yield is in the vineyard and do a better job of predicting what that yield's going to be. We also like to have an estimate of what the vine size is or pruning weight is in the vineyard, because putting those two things together gives us our crop load index or a VAS index or yield to pruning weight ratio, which basically tells us, are the vines undercropped, balanced, or overcropped, because that is going to have an impact on the rate of sugar accumulation in the fruit from veraison to harvest. It'll also have an effect on the net change in pruning weight or net change in vine size going into next season. So am I going to gain fruit crop potential for next year or lose crop potential for next year? And what we're after here is, can we get a better estimate of yield and a better estimate of vine size using some spatial data and in-field sampling, which will help us estimate what our crop load is going into veraison, so we have a prediction of how that fruit is going to mature from veraison to harvest and predict what the vine health is going to be for next season. Okay, so very simple. What do we use? We use an NDVI sensor that we put on a gator, and we basically scan the reflectance of the canopy in our Concord vineyard. So this picture was taken around bloom, and we have 4 NDVI sensors on this particular setup because we're trying to measure different things. But if you're just measuring canopy reflectance, you could actually get by with one sensor and a data logger and a GPS that's in the data logger. So at Bloom, we have that sensor more or less up by the cordon, where we're trying to measure differences in vegetative growth in that where the canopy is developing. And as the season progresses, because Concord has that drooping growth habit, we will move that sensor down throughout the season so that we maintain the sensor in the growing region of the canopy, because we really want an indication of where the vines are growing very strong and where they are weak. And if I leave that sensor up by the cordon, it'll saturate and I won't be able to tell the differences between strong vines and weak vines. So I need to move it. And it's one of the advantages of having a sensor up close and personal with the vines, is that you can put the sensor exactly where you need it to understand what the differences are in the vine growth. So after several years of research where we scan Concord vineyards weekly throughout the season, and we relate that to our yield maps or our pruning weight maps at the end of the season, we know that we get the highest correlation of the season is right at bloom or just before bloom between NDVI and what the final yield is going to be. And then we get higher correlations late season, so say around veraison or just before veraison, between NDVI and pruning weight. So I'm going to use those two time points to try to predict or estimate what my yield and pruning weight is in the vineyard. And then once I have the yield and pruning weight, I'm going to calculate a Rivaz index or a yield to pruning weight ratio. And here's my decision table. So this is published information. You can pause the video and study this table a little bit more. But, if we have a yield to pruning weight ratio, say in the 5 to 10 range, the vines are essentially undercropped. So we're going to have high fruit maturity, and the vines are going to gain pruning weight. And versus, say, having a yield to pruning weight ratio of 20 to 25, where the vines would be overcropped. So they're going to have a little bit delay in their fruit maturation, and they would potentially lose pruning weight going into next season. So we kind of know the numbers we need, whether the vines are undercropped, balanced, or overcropped, and what will happen in those situations. Okay, so what's our process? Simply, we're going to scan the vineyard with NDVI. And that data goes right into the data logger. The data logger gets imported right into my EV. So we clean up the data and interpolate it to the grid. You can watch videos on how to do that. Then we use the grid generator in my EV to select field validation points. The computer will either do it for you, or you can manually select the points you want to go to the vineyard to make that process more efficient. And more informative to your management decisions. And we go out and we collect field observations. So we either actually go out and estimate crop, or we estimate what the pruning weight is in those different locations in the vineyard. And if there is a good relationship between the spatial data, so like in this case, NDVI at bloom, with our crop estimate at our validation points, if there's a nice relationship there, we will translate the spatial data with the validation points, and now I can have a spatial yield estimate map in that vineyard, and that I can use that in my management practices. Okay, so let's show you how we did this. Here's the Cornell Lake Erie Research and Extension Lab. The purple blocks are the Concord blocks, and that's the ones we'll be dealing with. So we collected NDVI at bloom in this vineyard. So we see that there's a spatial difference in NDVI. Again, this is a relative sensor measurement, right? High, medium, and low. It's not actually telling me what the yield is at this point. So I use my EV in the grid generator to select the points in the vineyard where I want to go do my crop estimate. And then I use the translator, once I have collected the data in the field, to look to see if there's a relationship between NDVI and the yield estimate at those points. And then this is showing that there is. I have a correlation coefficient of about 0.58, which is okay, not great, could be better. But the relationship is good enough. where I can say, okay, where I have higher NDVI, I have higher predicted yield, and where I have lower NDVI, I have lower predicted yield. And then I use that in my translator. Okay, so I hit the translator button and it translates the NDVI into a yield map. So now this is my spatial predicted yield map for that vineyard. I look at the statistics and I see that I have a mean of 8 tons per acre, and then I multiply that by the number of acres I have, and then I can tell my processor rep, this is the tons per acre I can expect to deliver out of these blocks for the season. And that's really good for the processor. But from me, from a management standpoint, even more importantly, I know where the crop is high and where the crop is low. And I can marry that with my pruning weight or my vegetative growth and make a decision on if I need to thin the crop anywhere, or leave it, or it'll tell me how well that fruit will ripen from veraison to harvest. So to me, that's a very powerful map in that it's both giving you total yield, but it's also giving you the spatial distribution of yield in your vineyard. Okay, we do the same thing for pruning weight. So I take an NDVI later in the season, so close to veraison, get that NDVI. I use that spatial pattern to select points in the vineyards. Like, I want to find out, hey, what's going on in this, red really low area or this blue really big area, and give a clean estimate of what I really think that pruning weight is in there. I really won't know what the pruning weight is until I collect it during the dormant season, but I can go out, make a visual observation and estimate, is that a 1 pound vine, a 2 pound vine, a 3 pound vine, or a 4 pound vine? And again, put that data in, translate it so I get a predicted pruning weight map of that vineyard. So going anywhere, say, from 1.5 to 4 pound vines across this vineyard. I get a mean of about 2.8 pounds per vine. So because I've interpolated my yield map, my predicted yield map, and I've interpolated my predicted pruning weight map to the same grid, I can now use data at any single point in that vineyard to calculate my yield to pruning weight ratio, or my Rivaz index, which I did, and that's what it looks like. So I know that the green areas have a Rivaz index, or yield to pruning weight ratio, of 8 or below. So the green areas are undercropped. The yellow areas from 8 to 15. So those are balanced. And anything in the orange or the red is above 15. And in this case, above 25, which is not good. So severely overcropped are in the orange and the reds. So there's a couple of things I can use this in my predictive modeling. Is I know that the fruit's going to be dead ripe in the green, and I'm going to gain pruning weight, which is good because in this particular block, we've done a lot of renewal work and we're trying to gain pruning weight, build vine size, and yield potential in this vineyard. So that makes me very happy to see that. In this railroad block, they're balanced to undercrop, which is good. There's a little spot of weak vines, which is causing an overcrop, but nothing to worry about. But in this block, I'm seeing stuff where there are some vines that are overcropped. Now I can thin those vines, which is going to lower my yield potential, but it's going to bring those vines back into balance. And another thing I can use this map for is to say, when I go to harvest, I know exactly where I'm going to harvest first, right? I'm going to go to this block where the vines are undercropped, because in the first week of the harvest season, they should be dead ripe. So pick that high quality fruit. When I'm done there, I'm going to move to this block, which may take a little longer to ripen, but not that much because they're still balanced. I'll pick that block next. And then I'm going to leave this block that's heavy or a little overcropped. I'm going to let that hang a little bit longer because it's going to take a little longer for the fruit to ripen, and pick that last. Now, I know that there are some growers who like to do field blending, which is not something that we promote here. But again, this map would help you with that process of, if I'm going to pick some of this heavier stuff, which may have lower fruit quality, and I need to, add some ripe fruit to that load to make sure that it makes the quality standard at the plant, I know where to go get that sugar. So using a simple map like this has multiple uses in terms of your management practices. And again, so something very simple. I used a single NDVI sensor to scan my vineyard at 2 different times throughout the year. I used the MyEV software to process that data, select where I want to go take my field observations, and please go take the field observations. There is no substitute for a manager getting eyes on the vine to understand what is really happening in the vineyard, and translate those maps, and then you make viticulture maps, so yield, pruning weight, crop load, and use those maps in for your management decisions. Okay, so if you ever have any questions, you can contact me at trb7@cornell.edu, or go to the Efficient Vineyard website and leave us a message there or ask questions. Again, I hope this tutorial it's more of a case use for crop estimation than anything else. And I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, again, contact us. Thanks.